Hey guys, welcome back. I've got a video for you today. It's more on the Wizards of the Coast / Hasbro job cuts, and it's not so much news, although I'm sure there's probably more of that out there, but it's an interesting bit of perspective that I'd like to share with you guys. And of course, as you saw in the title, you know, this is from not just from me, but from someone who has been there and done that. So we're going to take a look at that in just a minute. But before we get into that, of course, I'd like to remind you that this video is brought to you by our friends at Hellebarde Games. Hellebarde makes the kind of adventures they'd like to play, whether it's for Castles and Crusades, for 5th edition, or for the OSR. Old School is in play at the table with Hellebarde Games, and you can check them out at DriveThruRPG or on their website, hellebardegames.com. Links are down below. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you like what I do here, click the subscribe button, click the bell icon for notifications, and leave us a comment and tell us all about it. So I got this link. Actually, I did a little bit of digging because I saw a notification from OGGM. He's got a video where he talks a bit more about the actual firings, and I'm going to link to his YouTube channel in the video where I kind of picked this up from, because that's what I do. You know, I get a source and I try to share it, especially if it's something that comes, you know, from our old school end. And while AD&Ders and original D&Ders might not look on 3rd edition and 3.5 and early Wizards of the Coast with nostalgia glasses, this is a time that was now 24 years ago. We're as far now from Wizards of the Coast acquiring TSR as we were from the creation of tabletop role-playing games by Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax when Wizards of the Coast acquired TSR. And that should be a very, very sobering thought for those of us who are not spring chickens. But I digress a little bit here. This is from a thread on ENWorld, and what this is this is Peter I'm sorry, I always make that mistake. Adkison, not Adkinson. Adkison, who was the owner of Wizards of the Coast at the time that they acquired TSR and Dungeons & Dragons and everything associated with it, and were shortly thereafter acquired by Hasbro in 1999. And he shares his thoughts on the layoffs, and I'm going to get at the end of the video to the to kind of the gist of my thoughts and something that's very telling in what he has to say. But let's take a look at this. I'll link to the ENWorld article so you guys can go read that as you like. So let's have a look. And we'll just read through this real quick. And his statement: Peter Adkison, who owned Wizards of the Coast until it was sold to Hasbro in 1999, oversaw the relaunch of Dungeons & Dragons with D&D 3rd edition. Today, and this is back on the 14th, he commented on this week's round of Hasbro layoffs, which have ripped through WOTC. Adkison left WOTC in 2000 and currently runs a production company called Hostile Work Environment. Like many of you, I'm saddened to learn about the layoffs at Hasbro. Caveat: I have no idea of what's happening behind the scenes at WOTC. If you're asking who's at fault or to what extent it was or was not justified, that's outside the scope of my knowledge. This post is about my own reflections. When I read about the layoffs at Hasbro, my immediate feeling was shame. Shame for when I did the same thing at the same company, WOTC, before we sold it to Hasbro. I have made lots of mistakes. Tons of them, more than I can even remember. And while I regret those mistakes and I'm sad for those I hurt, I realize it's part of learning and part of being human. But layoffs, when handled poorly, or when they are unnecessary, aren't just mistakes. They are failings of character. Those times when I had a failure of character, those are the moments that haunt me. So I want to share a couple of thoughts on this. First of all, I don't know if you guys watch the Speakeasy Nerdcognito here on YouTube. I try and link to them as often as I can. But Saturday's Speakeasy was pretty fire because it came on the heels of all this. I had dropped a video on Friday, but one of the hosts, and God, guys, I'm sorry, I can't remember who said this, but I'll have to go back and watch the video. You know what? I'll link to it. I will link to it, and I will link to the Speakeasy, so you guys can check them out too, because it's relevant to this. But one of them said, Charles Dickens wrote a book about this exact thing, firing people during the Christmas holidays. And I myself, I would certainly hope that Chris Cox is going to get visited by 3 ghosts, because I firmly agree with that. But let's take something here in the context of what Peter Adkison said. When I read about the layoffs at Hasbro, my immediate feeling was shame. Shame for when I did the same thing at the same company, WOTC, before we sold it to Hasbro. Think about that last phrase, before we sold it to Hasbro. I posit that there is something brewing at Hasbro, at Wizards of the Coast, that is bigger than just, we want to make a leaner, meaner Wizards of the Coast. Well, they've certainly made it meaner and leaner. Perhaps not in the way that they had expected. I think the bellwether here, and this was a eureka moment reading this statement by Adkison. Now, he's not saying this, he didn't state it. I'm reading between the lines, all right? My read on this by someone who was the owner of Wizards of the Coast, who has a production company now, somebody who's probably a better business brain than me. I'm just going to be honest with you. I mean, you know, I'm out here scrabbling around on YouTube, and he's run the most successful hobby games company in the world, and then sold it to the biggest toy maker in the world, and now has his own production company, right? But he made cuts at Wizards of the Coast before they sold it to Hasbro. I'm not saying he did those specifically because Hasbro said, lean your company up a little bit and we'll buy it. I'm just saying that when he did it, suddenly they became a lot more attractive. Some trigger, in my opinion, was tripped when they leaned up the company. What's going on at Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast? People talk about Magic and Dungeons and Dragons being the most profitable and making money and so on and etc. Are the powers that be at Hasbro attempting to save Hasbro by getting a massive influx of cash by selling off a leaned down Wizards of the Coast? Remember, they've jettisoned the staff that interfaced with the creators of Baldur's Gate 3, which, by all accounts, sings, dances, julienne's fries, and their movie production company, which I realize that Honor Amongst Thieves was not exactly a blockbuster, but at the same time, it didn't land with the same frozen turkey thud that the 1999 and 2000 and mid-2000 Dungeons & Dragons movies that got so bad they were direct to DVD at the end did. So let's take a read here for just a minute. I think, this is just my opinion, this is not financial advice, I'm not telling you to go do anything with your stocks or your investments. I definitely think that this gutting of Wizards of the Coast has everything to do with Hasbro trying to get back and infuse themselves with cash. Take this company that requires a lot of tinkering with, get back to the basics, and just shoo it away. Now, I know that there can be corporate licensing voodoo that can go on, and Hasbro's not stupid. I would imagine they would probably work in some kind of toy and game exclusivity agreements, even if the actual Magic the Gathering production and Dungeons and Dragons production went to someone else, that there would still be a huge influx of cash into Hasbro, having their cake and eating it too. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is just complete craziness. Maybe I'm just completely out in left field with this. I want to know what you guys think. So please leave a comment below. I'm going to link to all of these sources. So go check them out. Get your own perspective on it. But please do leave a comment below. Discuss this. Let me know what you think. And again, if you haven't, please do click the bell icon or click the subscribe button, click the bell icon for notifications. It really, really helps. And I'd like to thank everyone for checking out the video today. And we'll be back with more live streams and videos and so on and everything else. But until then, guys, keep your eyes on the newspapers. Peace.